All right. Well, another day, another podcast, Joe.
Who would have thought it? We're on a roll.
We are excited. So, we don't even have a name for our podcast yet. We're going to have to figure out what it's going to be.
I have absolutely no idea.
I don't either. There's so many, keeping it real or real estate, but
Right.
we got to think of something clever. So we'll put Rachel on it.
Okay. It's always good to have Rachel on it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
So I know what we are intending with the podcast is to do something that's timely as far as what's going on with the market, and then other things that are going on in any market. So today we wanted to just kind of focus on why people are so afraid, because most people in their recent memory with a market slowdown, they think 2008 and complete housing blow up. So today we're going to talk more about why the housing slowdown today is not the housing crisis that we had in 2008. So take it away, Joe. Start
Wonderful.
us off.
So there is a lot of news out there, and there's a lot of doomsday type people that are.
That's what sells.
Yeah, it does. But there's so many differences between this market and that market, and I would suggest for everybody who really wants a good lesson on it, two movies, two of my favorite movies that I would suggest you go watch. One is Too Big to Fail, and the other is The Big Short. And Too Big to Fail is about how it affected the banking and the banking crisis while everything happened. But The Big Short was really about what happened in lending, in the mortgage world that led up to the crisis. And in particular, there's about a 20-minute part in the movie where the people that were thinking about shorting the mortgage market go down to Miami.
Oh, right.
And they,
I remember this.
They interview a real estate agent, they interview a couple mortgage brokers, and they interview a purchaser of real estate. And they all came away with a good reality to what was going on in the mortgage market at the time.
Right. Well, we certainly saw some wild things out there.
It was crazy. So both of us, we were in the mortgage world, and we started real estate 2004. So we saw both worlds and combined, right? And one leading to the other. And there was just so many mortgage products that just kept coming out that it just got crazier and crazier every time. Whenever somebody would come in the office and tell us about something, we'd be like,
oh, yes. I think my favorite story was somebody's actual job was a golf cart technician.
Correct. And it was a no income, no asset type loan. They didn't have to verify anything.
The Nina loans.
The Nina, right. But my favorite or the one that I would say kind of put me over the top when I just said, hey, this has just gone way too far, was the negative amortization loan.
Oh, yeah.
Chevy Chase came out with that.
Yeah, that was so bad.
It was crazy because let's say you're going to buy a $400,000 house and you would get your payment coupon every month. You would actually have three options on what to pay every month, right?
Yep.
You could pay the fully amortized mortgage payment. So let's say it's a $400,000 loan. That payment was $2,800. You could pay $2,800, right? Or you had option two. You could pay just the interest that's due on it. So maybe instead of $2,800, it was $2,100. Or you had a third choice that was you could pay less than the amortized rate and the interest, and you could pay like $1,200 a month. So what do you think everybody did when they got that mortgage coupon?
They were going for the least amount.
Right. And that one single loan program took down Chevy Chase Bank. Anybody around our age would remember you see a Chevy Chase Bank on every corner.
Right.
It was a symbol around here.
I think it was my first bank, actually.
Yeah. When mom and dad took you to get a checking account, you went to Chevy Chase and you filled out, right.
My little passport book.
Right. So you got your little present from the bank, right?
Right.
But what ended up happening in 2009, Capital One purchased Chevy Chase Bank, just the assets, the good assets of the bank, for pennies on the dollar, and that's why all those Chevy Chase went away, and they're now Capital Ones that you see around the area.
What's in your wallet?
Yeah, exactly. But it just got crazy and out of hand, and that's the first big difference between what happened back then and what happened now is that the mortgage market's been cleaned up a little bit.
Right, and also that major recession in 2008 was caused by the housing market. What's going on right now, the housing market didn't cause what's happening.
Correct. But it wasn't just that it was everybody involved in the housing market. It was the government, it was the bankers, it was the brokers. Everybody was nobody thought it was never going to stop, right?
Right.
It was always going to get better, and everybody was making so much money that they kept changing the rules to keep it going.
And then it was also a push, or you said government was everybody should own a home.
Correct.
And not everybody should own a home.
Right, and actually, if you watch the movie Too Big to Fail, they show a scene at the beginning where George W. Bush is talking about that it was his initiative to get home ownership rate up from, I think it was like 63% at the time, up to 70%, right? It was to allow more people to own a home.
Right.
But things have changed.
Correct. Yes. So why don't we go back, talk about qualified mortgages. We were talking about the crazy loose mortgages, and now what specifically is QM?
So two good things really came out of the legislation out of the failure or the crisis, right? The first was they cleaned up the mortgage market, right? And they cleaned up that process of how somebody could get a mortgage.
Right.
And they came out with what's called the QM, the qualified mortgage. And basically, you have to have a job.
What?
Yeah. You have to have good credit. You have to have some form of down payment. You have to actually be able to qualify for a job on paper, tax returns. Everything has to be documented. And it got down to people who can buy a house and should buy a house, could buy a house.
Right.
Credit did freeze up a little bit after that for a little bit, so it took a little while for it to kind of get in. But what's happened, since 2008, 2009, really only people who should be buying homes have bought homes.
Right.
So they've cleaned up that aspect of it, and since that aspect has been cleaned up, that's one of the big reasons why this shift is not the bubble that we saw back then.
Right. That we don't have a ton of, or a hidden foreclosure market that's coming. That's just negative news. It's fake news, Joe.
It is. And to go, just two numbers that came out yesterday, and it's actually 34% of all homes in the United States are owned free and clear. There is no mortgage. Right?
I'm always astounded by that fact.
Right. You wouldn't think it's that many.
Right.
But then
it's a third.
What do you think the average amount of, I don't think you saw this one, the average amount of equity in a home in the United States is?
As of today?
As it came out yesterday, CoreLogic.
Oh, average amount of equity. I go ahead.
58%.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that so that factors in all the ones
course,
that have
100%.
that are 100%, but then the other 66% thrown in there, the average is there's 58% equity, and people that have purchased in the last 5-6 years, their mortgage rates are 3%, 3.25%. They put 10% down on the house, 15% down, that's 20% of the house. They're not going to let their house go, and they qualify for that mortgage, right? It's not a payment they can't afford, so they're not going to let that house go. And the foreclosure rates have just dropped dramatically, like you said.
Right, and I think that when you look at the main difference is that in 2008 people were in adjustable rate mortgages with no equity, upside down equity. And today, people are in fixed rate mortgages with a lot of equity.
Absolutely. So they're, unless they need to sell, they're not selling. But that leads to a whole nother problem, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. So let's talk about that low inventory.
Yes.
I mean, can I just say I was looking at some houses in a subdivision in Clarksburg, Maryland, and just looking for some comps, and I pulled up or looking for an active townhouse, and there was not one in an entire subdivision.
Wow.
I know. Well, remember back in 2009?
What was that number? I always forget. You always give me that stat.
So we went on a listing appointment for an owner of a townhome, and there were 44 other townhouses for sale just in that little subdivision, not in the whole zip code, just in that neighborhood. Every other house was for sale.
Right. It was like from the movie when they're in Miami, they're driving down the street, every third house was for sale. It was just like that in Clarksburg Town Center. And I remember we had to go in there and say, look, there's 44 houses for sale and only 2 are selling a month.
Right.
If you want to sell, your price needs to be here. Right.
Because if you don't, it was dropping again.
Right. If you're number 10 out of 44, that wasn't going to do any good for you. You had to be 1 or 2 because there's only 2 selling it.
I know the absorption rate was horrendous.
It was crazy. And that problem hasn't gone away, right? I mean, that problem has gone away.
That's gone away. I'm like, hold on.
No, sorry, that's gone away. But the inventory problem is something that's constraining us from not going backwards to the bubble. Right?
Correct. Right. Because there are buyers. I mean, in any market, good, bad, winter, summer, people need to buy and sell homes, and people now they need homes, and they're just waiting for the house to come on. And yes, interest rates are definitely a factor, but again, it's not. It's just been a challenge that we're overcoming.
Correct. So really, to kind of wind it down, the two main differences are the mortgage market's been cleaned up, and we're nowhere near that, and we have an inventory shortage that is not going away. That is preventing a bubble, because to have a bubble, you have to have more people that want to sell something than people that want to buy it. That's what causes a bubble and the crashes to flow. Right. But if you don't have that disproportionate ratio, you're not going to have the bubble, right? Because
there's no bubble to pop?
No.
That makes me sad.
We're flattening, and the market, the Fed is getting exactly what the Fed wanted right now. And they wanted to slow us down.
And they have.
And mortgage rates are going to settle in the mid fives or so. We'll talk more about that on another day.
Okay.
But we're going to have a nice kind of normal real estate market for the next 5-7 years.
I believe that too. And so it really is, if people have questions, they really should, give us a call. We run a team of professional real estate agents. Everyone is a full-time agent, and we have answers to assist our clients for sure.
Absolutely.
So, all right.
Always great talking to the best real estate agent on the planet.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Sablehouse.
You're welcome, Ms. Sablehouse.